What's going on, guys? Zuko back with another Dragonflight video. Hope you're all doing very, very well. We are continuing on with the mini-series of the Enhancement Shaman build tier list. So again, at the very end of all the different videos, I'm going to rank the different builds in a tier list. I think some of you have been kind of waiting for that. It's going to happen at the end. I just want to make sure I get through all the builds first and talk about their strengths and weaknesses. And when I'm ranking them on, I'm going to obviously tell you about the categories here. We're talking about the Elementalist build today. This is like the most popular build right now. Has been for a while, I would say, for Enhancement Shaman. If you just look at Subcreation or other sites, this is probably the most popular build. But is it the best build? We're going to talk about that. Again, the categories are damage, single target, and AoE, primarily in the context of Mythic Plus, right? All this stuff is within the context of Mythic Plus, primarily. But the damage is going to be assessed on single target and AoE. They both get a 5 out of 10 for a total of 10. And then we've got ease of use, we've got Maelstrom Weapon Stack Generation, and tier set bonus interaction. So how does the Elementalist build stack up against all these different factors? We're going to talk about that in the video today. First of all, how does the build work? These are the general talents you're going to take for the Elementalist build. You can drop Elemental Blast if you want to. A lot of the builds do drop Elemental Blast, and you can put this point wherever else you want to go. Some people put Wind Fury Totem to help their group. Some people just throw it into, like, Storm Blast. That's probably a bad one, actually, though. You could just put it into, I don't actually know where. Maybe, I guess you probably go Crashing Storms. That would be the better one to put it into for sure. So for AoE, do this. On Tyrannical Weeks, you could actually take LE Blast, and it's going to get a lot of value. You're really pressing a lot more of your fire buttons, and then you're pressing Frost Shock a lot as well in the dungeon. Not that you're not pressing Chain Lightning. Of course, Chain Lightning is your main spender in AoE, but the big thing is that on Tyrannical Weeks, you're going to get a bit more value out of Elemental Blast on the boss fight. So what does it look like? Here's what the damage will kind of look like. I'll do a little bit of a rotation here. The one big thing with the Elementalist build that changes from every other build is that instead of just doing builder spender, right? Instead of just building Maelstrom Weapon Stacks and spending them on Chain Lightning, you're doing builder spender Frost Shock, because you have to cash in on the Hailstorm buff that you get. Every time you use a spender, your next Frost Shock will do extra damage, and it will cleave to all nearby enemies, and that ends up adding up to a lot of extra damage. My Frost Shock was almost 12% of my damage here. It probably could be even higher. Again, I'm probably not playing the build 100% optimally, but your Frost Shock damage will be really big. That's the big difference with this build. Builder, Spender, Frost Shock instead of just Builder, Spender. It has that extra step. That can really mess up a lot of people, and it can be kind of a frustrating way to play. So let's look at the damage rotation here. Again, you want to go Feral Spirits first. This build utilizes Elemental Spirits very, very well, right? Buffing your spirits. So you're going to go Feral Spirits into Primordial Wave, into, I would spread it around with Lava Lash, then go Sundering into your Lightning Bolt, into an Ice Strike Frost Shock. Ice Strike will double the damage of your Frost Shock. It's very complicated, but let me just show you real quick, okay? Then, once you're into your rotation, you're trying to tab target with Lava Lash, and then use a spender, and then use Frost Shock, okay? So we go Wolves, Primordial Wave, spread it around, Sundering, Lightning Bolt, Ice Strike here, Frost Shock, Lava Lash. I'm going to do a Chain Lightning in a second. Chain Lightning, Frost Shock, spreading with Lava Lash, okay? Second Chain Lightning, Frost Shock, Lava Lash. The burst is pretty good. Big damage here, okay? We'll do an Ice Strike, tab targeting with Lava Lash still. Okay, Chain Lightning coming up here into an Ice Strike. Frost Shock, sorry. It's always, want to always use that Chain Lightning into a Frost Shock whenever possible. I don't think I cashed in on my Primordial Wave, did I? That was a huge mistake. This is part of the problem with the build. You'll see this in a second. So one thing you need to do is manage the Chain Lightnings and the Lightning Bolt, because obviously you need to press Lightning Bolt after your Primordial Wave. Let's go Sundering, Primordial Wave, then Lightning Bolt. I think I did that on the first one. There's Lightning Bolt. Big haste window. Boom, boom, boom. We're going. Maelstrom Weapon Stacks. Building. Okay. Ice Strike. I'm tab targeting with Lava Lash. I'm doing Chain Lightning. I'm Ice Striking. Dogs on cooldown. Lava Lash. Chain Lightning. Ice Strike. Then Frost Shock. Lava Lash tab target. Chain Lightning. Crash Lightning. Tab target with Lava Lash. Frost Shock. It's very complicated. And I know that for some of you guys, it can be a little intimidating. I don't blame you at all. There's a lot going on with this build. This is going to be a recurring theme with this video. just kind of how complicated this build can get. And yeah, anyway, your damage, your Frost Shock damage should be probably the highest of your entire build. When I did the dungeon, of course, it wasn't, because I wasn't playing it super well. But this is a better idea of what your damage should look like, right? At the end of a dungeon. Frost Shock, Chain Lightning. Your Flame Shock will do tons of damage because you're tab targeting and putting Lashing Flames debuff on everybody. And then Crash Lightning, Lava Lash, Lightning Bolt, Sundering. So your Storm Strike's like not even really a thing, but all the rest of your damage is there. It's all elemental damage. That's why it's called the Elementalist build. Frost damage, nature damage with your Chain Lightning, Crash Lightning, and then fire damage. So this build, that's how it works. That's the kind of rotation. I'm going to get to all the other categories in a minute. Let's start out with the damage. Overall, I did a plus 17 Underrot here. Did about 108k overall. This is what my damage looked like. Again, I was taking LE Blast because of the single target. It's Tyrannical week right now. I thought it gave me a little bit more value on the Tyrannical fights, but you don't have to. You can flip into Crashing Storms. It's probably a little bit better overall. Chain Lightning still very high because our tier set bonus is buffing it. Flame Shock super high. Lava Lash, Frost Shock. My Frost Shock should have been higher. I'm just not playing it super well. I will say stats-wise, I'm high on crit because I primarily do a storm build with crit, and I really enjoy that, and it works really well for that build. Mastery is the way to go on this build. It is absolutely the way to go. You want to be picking up Mastery for this build. It's going to serve you much, much better. Crit is okay, but Mastery is really the way to go. So, damage-wise, on AoE, let's get a rating going here. For AoE damage, I'm giving it 5 out of 5. It's really strong on AoE damage. It's very, very good. On single target damage, I'm going to give it 4 out of 5. Partially because you can run out of Maelstrom weapon stacks easily. I'm going to show you the dungeon footage quickly just to show you that. Let me show you the opener here. This is AoE damage again. So for AoE damage, I'm giving it 5 out of 5. And again, I didn't really even do this for. This is my Primordial Wave Burst right there. I lost, and then I'm in Sundering window, trying to get some Frost Shocks out. We're getting about 200k. If I was playing this really, really well, and I know lots of you guys are better at this build than I am, if I was playing this really well, you'd be peaking at 400 to 500k probably on a big fight like this with Lust. Like, you really would. Your AoE damage is superb because Frost Shock will hit up to 6 targets, which is really good. That's really solid AoE damage. But it also does lots of damage even if you only have 2 targets or 3 targets. And then, of course, your Chain Lightning does lots of damage as well. You can see on a small pack like this, we still have really, really good cleave damage. This is 3-target cleave. I'm going to go Sundering here into my Sundering first, then my Lightning Bolts from Primordial Wave. And you can see we're going to get tons of damage even on 3 targets. Almost 200k on 3 targets. So it's very good even if you have less than optimal sort of AoE targets. Very, very, very strong. Let's go to the single target fight. Here's a boss fight. I think the damage, we're still talking about damage, right? I think the damage for single target, I'm going to give 4 out of 5. Partially because you can really run out of Maelstrom weapon stack generation with this build if you're not getting lucky. Your Ice Strike and Frost Shock are going to carry the load when it comes to generating Maelstrom weapon stacks. But because of how complicated this build is to execute, how convoluted this build can be at times, I feel like your damage will suffer if you're not playing this optimally. I'm going to say, like, for the average player, which I would throw myself in the average player category, maybe a little bit above average, but I'm no expert at this. I'm no expert at this particular build. I think I'm much better at the Storm build. But I'm just going to say, for the average player trying to play this, you're going to lose damage in single target because there's so many different buttons you need to press. I'm going to get to the ease of use in a second. Our damage isn't terrible, but it's not the best. So I'm going to give it 4 out of 5 for the single target damage. On a pure single target fight, it definitely suffers a little bit there. You can see by the end of this fight, this is even like a 2-target cleave fight, so we're cheating a little bit because we're getting Primordial Wave value, we're getting Chain Lightning damage, so we're going to be doing a little bit more on this fight, okay? It's not bad by any means. The damage is still getting 9 out of 10 in total. It's not bad at all. It's just that it can be a little bit frustrating to play sometimes. Let's talk about the main category that I really want to focus in on this, which is going to be the ease of use or the difficulty of the build. Let me back up a little bit here. The difficulty of this build, the score I'm giving it is 1 out of 5, which means the build is incredibly difficult to play. The ease of use, the build, like, easiness is very low. It's very hard to play this build compared to every other build. I think the Storm build is probably the easiest. I think the Fire Blaster build that I did yesterday is actually pretty easy to play as well, because again, you don't have the extra wrinkle of having to press Frost Shock on every single pack. This is the main problem. You have to do Builder, Spender, Frost Shock. It's that third little part that can really mess up and take away from your ability to do everything. On top of that, you have multiple setup abilities. You have a Primordial Wave that you have to set up. So you have to do a Flame Shock plus a Lava Lash to spread 5 Flame Shocks, then do a 6th target with Primordial Wave, then detonate it with Lightning Bolt. But you should be detonating it within your Sundering window, which I don't even do here. I messed that up. I do a big Lightning Bolt here, which is great, but I should have pressed Sundering first because of the tier set bonus that you get. Right? The tier set bonus gives us 24% more mastery. I'll talk about this in a minute. But in terms of ease of access, in terms of the difficulty of this build, you should be pressing Sundering first, then detonating those Lightning Bolts. And in this case, I had to lust. And then I want to press Frost Shock, because I have to press it after every spender, Frost Shock. That adds another layer. So now I've done my Lightning Bolt detonation on Primordial Wave, but now I press Sundering. So now I need to press Chain Lightning twice, because I have a buff to my Chain Lightning. But on top of that, I need to make sure that I'm Frost Shocking in between every single Chain Lightning. And on top of that, there's like mechanics going on in the fight. On top of that, if I get a Hot Hand proc, which I've had for this entire time, and I haven't really been using it, if I have a Hot Hand proc, I should be tab targeting through enemies because of the Lashing Flames debuff that I'll put on them. So, here's how crazy this is. When you start a fight, you want to summon your wolves, make sure that they're on, make sure that they're up all the time. When you press Primordial Wave, you're going to get 10 stacks of Maelstrom weapon. So you need to make sure you're at 0 stacks, ideally, so you're not wasting that. So you press Primordial Wave, it gives you 10 stacks. You have to spread those Flame Shocks around, then detonate your Lightning Bolts. Okay, so I pressed Primordial Wave right here. But I also need to press Sundering first to get the Lightning Bolt damage in the Sundering Mastery window, okay? So then I press Sundering, then I go Lightning Bolt, which is great. I'm doing lots of damage, but now I have 2 Chain Lightnings I need to deal with, and I need to be tab targeting, and I'm forgetting to Frost Shock after every spender. There are so many things you can mess up with this build. It is ridiculous. There are so many things. On top of that, if I want to help out with the afflicted mobs down here with my Curse Dispels, which I should be doing as a helpful DPS player, it's another wrinkle in the build where I'm having to focus on doing that. You can see I press it here, I get the Dispel. There are so many things to think about with this build. You need to press Lava Lash when Hot Hand procs. You need to tab target to enemies when Hot Hand procs to get the Lashing Flames debuff. You have to press Lightning Bolt after Primordial Wave. You don't want to press Primordial Wave if you have any Maelstrom weapon stacks, because it's going to give you 10. You don't want to press Primordial Wave if your wolves are off cooldown, because it's going to give you 20 seconds off the cooldown of your wolves. You have to make sure that you summon your wolves before you Primordial Wave. You want to press Chain Lightning after Sundering twice, or you're going to waste that damage. You want to press Frost Shock after every single spender, or you waste that damage. And you want to press Ellie Blast in single target if you've talented into it. But you can only really do it if you don't have the Primordial Wave or the Sundering buff. Do you see how ridiculous that is? You see how convoluted that is? It's insane how many little things you need to think about with this build. Sorry, let me back up a bit. Does this build do a lot of damage? Yes, it does. Is this build easy to play? No, it's not. I'm giving it a 1 out of 5 for the ease of use or the difficulty level of this build. It is the most difficult build to play by far. It's not even close, because there's so many different things to think about. Okay? So, that being said, let's talk about the Maelstrom Weapon Stack generation. Does it generate Maelstrom Weapon Stack? Yes, it does. I'm giving it 4 out of 5 for Maelstrom Weapon Stack generation, because it is solid on the generation, especially in AoE. You have buttons like Crash Lightning will give you lots of Maelstrom Weapon Stack generation. Your Ice Strike and your Frost Shocks will both give Maelstrom Weapon Stack generation because of Swirling Maelstrom. Let me look at it really, really quickly for you. Right? Swirling Maelstrom gives it from Ice Strike and from Frost Shock. So that's a ton of generation right there. Primordial Wave will give you 10 Maelstrom Weapon Stacks when you press it, which is great. That's great for Maelstrom Weapon Stack generation. Your Wolves will give you lots of Maelstrom Weapon Stack generation as long as they're up, and we have lots of abilities that cool them down. When you press Sundering and you get your tier set bonus, you're going to get those next 2 Chain Lightnings will refund the Maelstrom Weapon Stack spent on them. So it's very, very good. I'm giving it 4 out of 5 because on boss fights, you can definitely fall into a little bit of a drought. where you're struggling to get those Maelstrom weapon stacks going. For example, a pure single target fight like this, like Sport Caller Zancha, this can be where you struggle a little bit, where you have to lean into Storm Strike a little bit more. You have to make sure that you're absolutely nailing your Primordial Wave window. You don't want to have any Maelstrom weapon stacks before you press Primordial Wave, or you're wasting that huge 10 stacks that you're getting. You want to make sure that your wolves are up as much as possible. I just had a perfect kind of cast right there. You get 20 seconds off your wolves when you press Primordial Wave. So this is the perfect time to press Primordial Wave right now. Primordial Wave, boom, get my wolves back. That's the ideal timing that you want to go for. But it doesn't always line up perfectly like that. It's not always perfect. It takes a lot of practice. It takes a lot of attempts at doing it. You can see my damage right now is horrible on this boss fight. This is what I was talking about for the single target damage, suffering a little bit. I'm not the best player of this build, I'll give you that, so my damage will climb up a little bit here. But in terms of Maelstrom weapon stack generation, it's very good in AoE. It's pretty good in single target. Not the best, but pretty good. So I'm giving it a 4 out of 5 for Maelstrom weapon stack generation because it does have a bunch of tools. You just need to use them correctly. Let's talk about the tier set bonus. Let me just pause this for a second. The tier set bonus for the Elementalist build is the best out of any build. It utilizes the tier set bonuses, the best out of any build possible. That's because you get elemental spirits, which are going to potentially buff your nature damage, your frost damage, or your fire damage. Guess what? We do all three of those. We do fire damage with Lava Lash and Flame Shock. We do frost damage with Frost Shock, with the Hailstorm buffing it, right? And then we do fire damage. Did I already talk about that? Lightning damage is Crash Lightning, Chain Lightning. Fire damage is Lava Lash. You get the point. When you look at the details breakdown, you can see fire damage, nature damage, fire damage, frost damage, all types, nature damage, fire damage, right? It's all there. So the tier set bonus giving us mastery, we use that the best out of any build. No matter what button we're pressing, we're basically going to benefit from the extra 24% mastery. On top of that, we get 20% fire damage, which a lot of our fire damage, as I just showed you, a lot of our damage is fire damage, as I just showed you. And then the next two chain lightnings, again, we do extra nature damage, probably because of the wolves that we have spawned due to elemental spirits, depending on if we're getting lucky or not. But it cashes in on the tier set bonus better than any other build, in my opinion. So 5 out of 5 for the tier set bonus there. Okay? The total score for the Elementalist build is 19 out of 25. It's 9 out of 10 for damage, okay? It's 1 out of 5 for ease of use, or the difficulty scale, okay? It's 4 out of 5 for Maelstrom weapon stack generation, and 5 out of 5 for the tier set bonus interaction. So it's definitely not bad at all, but it does get a 19 out of 25. The big problem with this build is that ease of use. It's the ability to execute this build. Is this build easy to execute compared to the Storm build? Not at all. Is it easy to execute compared to the Fire Blaster build? Not anywhere near as easy as the Fire Blaster build. Why? Because of Frost Shock with the Hailstorm. You have that third step in your DPS rotation. Builder, Spender, Frost Shock. And you have to do it or you're losing damage. So I know for a lot of people, I got some comments on the Fire Blaster build about how they just didn't like this build because it's so difficult to execute. I feel your pain. This is even worse. Is this build good? Does it do a lot of damage? Yes, it does. If you practice and practice and practice with this build, you will be able to get to a point where you can do amazing damage. But there are so many conflicting responsibilities with this build. When there's so many problems with this build that are just frustrating to deal with. I summon my wolves. I press Primordial Wave. I spread it around. I go Sundering to cash in on my Lightning Bolt damage. There, now I'm in my window. I need to tab target for Lava Lash, but I need to do a Frost Shock. I forgot to do a Frost Shock. Let's do that. Now I'm tab targeting. Then I do a Chain Lightning because I have my Sundering tier set bonus giving me Chain Lightning. Okay, there's another Chain Lightning. I did 2 Chain Lightnings before I did a Frost Shock, so I'm messing it up already. You can just see, there's so many things to think about mentally for this build that it really makes you, it's going to make you do less damage, in my opinion, overall, because there's going to be such a struggle to make sure you're pulling it off correctly. I'm not even in an actual dungeon right now. I'm not having to deal with real mechanics on a boss fight. I'm not having to deal with the afflicted mobs in the back. I'm not having to deal with, dropping Cap Totem, wanting to drop Poison Cleanse Totem, wanting to purge an enemy, wanting to purge a debuff on myself with Fire Blood, using my defensive, getting Rocky out if I need to, pressing AG. There's getting to use my utility in this build is the hardest it's ever going to be because you're so consumed with trying to execute the build properly, in my opinion. Okay? So 19 out of 25. This build is good. It's just difficult to use. That's the TLDR. It's very good, very difficult to use. Let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. Please, I would love to hear from you guys on the Elementalist build. Do you think I gave it a bad rating? Remember, the criteria for which I'm judging this stuff, it isn't just about damage. It's about all the other stuff, too. So let me know what you think in those comments down below. Like and subscribe, guys. It would really help me out. Help me out with the channel since I had my channel get completely taken over and deleted recently. I would appreciate you guys resubbing if you haven't. Thank you so much again for watching, guys. I love you all. I will see you in the next one.